Welcome to this article on the Forest Conservation Act 1980. The Forest Conservation Act 1980 is an act of the Parliament of India to provide for the conservation of forests and for matters connected therewith or ancillary or incidental thereto. It was further amended in 1988. The Forest Conservation Act law extends to the whole of India. It was enacted by Parliament of India to control further deforestation of forest areas in India. The Act came into force on 25th October 1980. This Act has 5 sections. Section 1 of the Forest Conservation Act explains short title, extent, and the date of commencement. It states that, number 1, this Act may be called the Forest Conservation Act 1980. This Act extends to the whole of India. Number 3, it shall be deemed to have come into force on the 25th day of October 1980. Section 2 of the Act is about the restriction on the state government for de-reservation of forests or use of forest land for non-forest purpose. It prohibits the state government, except prior permission from central government, for issuing orders directing, number 1, that any reserved forest within the meaning of the expression reserved forest in any law for the time being in force in that state or any portion thereof shall cease to be reserved. Number 2, that any forest land or any portion thereof may be used for any non-forest purpose. Number 3, that any forest land or any portion thereof may be assigned by way of lease or otherwise to any private person or to any authority, corporation, agency, or any other organization not owned, managed, or controlled by government. Number 4, that any forest land or any portion thereof may be cleared of trees which have grown naturally in that land or portion for the purpose of using it for reforestation. As provided in explanation, non-forest purpose means the breaking up of clearing of any forest land or portion thereof for, number A, the cultivation of tea, coffee, spices, rubber, palms, oil-bearing plants, horticultural crops or medicinal plants. B, any purpose other than reforestation but does not include any work relating or ancillary to conservation, development and management of forests and wildlife, namely the establishment of checkposts, fire lines, wireless communications and construction of fencing, bridges and culverts, dams, water holes, trench marks, boundary marks, pipelines or other like purposes. Section 3 of the Act deals with constitution of advisory committee. It gives central government the power to constitute a committee of such number of persons as it may deem fit to advise the government with regard to, number 1, the grant of approval for the purpose which is prohibited in section of this Act, or, number 2, any other matter connected with the conservation of forests which may be referred to it by the central government. Section 3A deals with penalty for contravention of the provisions of the Act. It states that whoever contravenes or abates the contravention of any of the provisions of Section 2 shall be punishable with simple imprisonment for a period which may extend to 15 days. Section 3B deals with cases in which the offence is made by authorities of government departments. In such cases, it says that the head of the department shall be considered guilty, although if he proves that it was done without his knowledge, or that he exercised all due diligence to prevent the commission of such offence. Section 4 deals with power to make rules. It states that number 1, the central government may, by notification in the official gazette, makes rules for carrying out the provisions of this act. Number 2, every rule made under this act shall be laid, as soon as may be after it is made, before each House of Parliament, while it is in session, for a total period of 30 days, which may be comprised in one session, or in 2 or more successive sessions, and if, before the expiry of the session immediately following the session or the successive sessions aforesaid, both houses agree in making any modification in the rule, or both houses agree that the rule should not be made, the rule shall thereafter have effect only in such modified form or be of no effect as the case may be. So, however, that any such modification or annulment shall be without prejudice to the validity of anything previously done under that rule. Section 5 deals with repealing and saving. It states that number 1, the Forest Conservation Ordinance 1980 is hereby replaced. Number 2, notwithstanding such repeal, anything done or any action taken under the provisions of the aforesaid ordinance shall be deemed to have been done or taken under the corresponding provisions of this Act. 1992 Amendment in the Forest Act. In 1992, some amendment was made in the Act which made provisions for allowing some non-forest activities in forests without cutting trees or limited cutting with prior approval of central government. These activities are setting of transmission lines, seismic surveys, exploration, drilling, and hydroelectric projects. The last activity involves large-scale destruction of forest, for which prior approval of the center is necessary. Let's understand Section 2 in some more details. So what Section 2 basically referred to is, it restricted the state governments and other authorities to make laws in the following matters without the prior permission of the central government. Number 1, the state government cannot de-reserve any forest land or any portion of it reserved under any law for the time it is being enforced in the state. Number 2, the state government, the forest land or any portion of it cannot be used for non-forest purposes by the state government. The state government also cannot assign any forest land or any portion of it by way of lease to any private person or anybody or organization not controlled by the government of India. The state government also cannot clear for deforestation a land or any part of it grown naturally. The explanation of this section defines the term non-forest purposes. It means cleaning any forest land or its portions for the purpose of planting tea, coffee, spices, rubber, palms, oil-bearing plants or medicinal plants, or for any purpose other than afforestation, but it should not include any work related to preservation, evolution and administration of forests and wildlife. So what is the importance of this act? The importance of forests cannot be underestimated in our lives. We rely on forests for our survival, from the air we breathe to the wood we use. In addition to providing protection for livestock and human livelihoods, forests protect watersheds, prevent soil erosion, and fights climate change. The main importance of the Forest Conservation Act of 1980 is to protect and preserve the forests of the country and prevent deforestation, which leads to land erosion and degradation of the land. The Act aims to protect the flora and fauna and other diverse ecological components. The Act prevents the conversion of forested areas into non-forested areas like agricultural lands, residential units, and also prevents the loss of forest biodiversity. The state governments and other authorities are no longer permitted to make decisions in certain areas without first obtaining approval from the federal government. The central government has full authority to carry out the laws of this Act, and infringement of this Act's provisions would also be punishable. Thank you very much for listening to this article on the Forest Conservation Act of 1980. For more such articles, download and install the UPSC Practice app from the App Store.